In 2006, developer EA Tiburon released 8 games: Arena Football, NCAA Football 07, Madden NFL 07, NFL Street 3, NASCAR 07, and their most ambitious game, Superman Returns. Oh, and they released NFL Head Coach. Who exactly was this game for? For those who have never heard of this game, you create your own head coach and, well, you coach. You do the same things in Madden: re-sign your players, pick up unrestricted free agents, sign restricted free agents, select players in the NFL draft, and even go through training camp before heading into the season to compete against other teams. Everything you can do in Madden, but with its own twist. So again, who was this game for? With an interview from IGN, Wick Strausser, the senior developer of EA Tiburon at the time, he said, "We look at what are called manager games, which are fairly successful in Europe as soccer games, but frankly those games can be boring, very text-based, very data-heavy. So we wanted to take this kind of game and make it a new genre called visual sports strategy game, or 3D sports strategy game." What I took from that statement was that EA saw an opportunity to make some more money by capitalizing on a market that has yet to be hit. NFL Head Coach sold just over 500,000 copies to console players. To put that in perspective, Madden NFL 07 sold 7.4 million copies. It turned out that the market that they were trying to hit was much smaller than they thought it was. There's really not too much to be said about the modes in NFL Head Coach. There's mainly 3 in total: Coach Now, Career Mode, and Online Mode. I never played Online Mode, so I can't really say anything about it, but Coach Now is a head-to-head mode against another team. You pick the plays, and you watch it play out. Pretty straightforward. But for the majority of this video, I will be talking about Career Mode. As you begin, you get the option to choose what type of positional coordinator you were before starting. This is what your coach's initial attributes will be based on, along with creating the coach model that you'll be using throughout the game. You'll then be given an ESPN video package hyping up your coach and how he's the hottest new candidate on the market.
Is my team getting this year's hottest commodity in a headset?
EA hardly used ESPN in their NFL games, and I'm fairly certain they chose not to use it again after how poorly this game sold. Which is a shame, because the video packages from ESPN were some of the best parts of this game. They also had a video package by Steve Sable. I grew up watching old NFL films that used to run on ESPN, and it was a delight to see him in this game as he narrates the highs and lows, but mostly highs, of your coaching career. Before you can coach a team, you must set up an interview with the team. During the interview, you'll be asked about your coaching philosophies, which is somewhat important because, like the Madden games where you can run different types of schemes that best fit your players, you can also run schemes in NFL Head Coach, but you better write it down because you won't be able to look it up after the interview. You also won't be able to see what players fit your scheme. It's a hidden mechanic, or it at least hid itself from me. Like I said, it's somewhat important, but it really didn't affect the way I played. During the interview, you'll also be given trivia questions about the defense or offense based on what you selected earlier for your coach. Based on how you answer these questions, you'll get a boost to your ratings. Once the interview is over, you'll get an offer from that team and 4 other teams in need of your services. These offers will show you what they're willing to pay you and for how long. It'll also inform you what they expect out of you during your first year, as well as giving you a quick brief of the team, such as their previous record, the offense and defensive coordinators' ratings, and how much cap you'll have to work with this offseason. While the last page will show you the 3 best players on the team. Once you select the team, you must now choose who will remain on the coaching staff and who will be let go. You will go around the table manually selecting each coach to start the process. The left side of the table is the offense, the right side is the defense, and before you start talking, you'd want to go to the computer to check out each individual coach and their ratings, because you won't be shown this during the conversation, which is weird since there's so much space unused on the right side. Why not use that to display the coach ratings, instead of having to check prior to talking to them? When you finish deciding who to retain or let go from the previous regimen, you now must set up interviews to fill in the open positions. You can also promote positional coaches to coordinator positions, which is a really neat feature. When looking for a new coach to hire, there's really not much to go off of, as they only show one rating and their previous job. No one really differentiates themselves from one another. You also can't choose what position you're hiring them for. The game just assumes you're hiring them for the first open position you have. Interviewing is also strange because you don't unlock their ratings, you just see what schemes they run, and if you match what you already plan on doing. Each coach on the team, from positional coaches to coordinators, will also have a level of trust with you from the start. The higher they are, the more positive their responses are towards you, and the lower, the more negative. Be careful though, as if they get too low, they will end up quitting the team mid-season. Well, the positional coaches will quit. I have yet to have a coordinator quit on me. Up next is to re-sign players who need a new contract. Before we do that, this game isn't like Madden where the off-season is divided into chunks. It's done by blocks. Each day is divided into 4 blocks with events that are locked, like meetings or office hours. The game will set up events for you throughout each period, such as signing players. This is how it was when I was interviewing coaches as well, as the game pre-scheduled blocks for you to spend that time hiring the new staff, which means most of the time you'll be going from block to block and will be spending a lot of time looking at these loading screens. The staff will recommend players for you to resign to the team. They're usually the best rated player at their respected position, but they don't take into account age. I bring this up because I re-signed Isaac Bruce and he regressed hard within the first month. I also noticed a few other players over 30 regressed hard and a few that hardly regressed at all. I don't know if it has more to do with me being more of a defensive-minded coach, because the players affected most were on offense. When re-signing a player, you must call their agent. From there, we will inform the agent that we plan on bringing the player back to the team, in which they'll give us an offer. We have the choice to counter-offer or accept what they're asking. I hardly ever countered, and when I did, it was to lower the contract years, and they still accepted it. Oh, and agents have a trust meter too. I'm not sure what it does yet, since I never felt like the offers were too outrageously high, but I'm sure their response to you would get aggressive, similar to the coaches with low trust. Oh, and before I forget, yes, players can hold out in this game. I'm sure you noticed by now, but player ratings are also slightly different. It's more of a potential rating. With a solid week of practice, they can reach their potential, but a bad one will keep it low. There are also multiple new ratings that have never been on this version of the Madden games. Short, medium, and long passing accuracy, route running, beat press, and other things that would later be used in future console generations of Madden. Going back to the off-season, once you've finished re-signing players, you move on to the free agency period, more correctly, the unrestricted free agency. During this time, you can sign players that are free agents in a similar way to how you re-signed your own players. You call their agent, give them an offer. The twist is you can't see the ratings of the player in free agency. The only way to do this is if you scout them. There are scouting blocks in your schedule where you can scout players. Keep in mind that there are 3 phases to scouting: poorly scouted, scouted, and well scouted. You can use this block period to scout free agents, and this mechanic will be the same when scouting players in the draft. During each block period, you can only scout 8 times, which means you may not be able to scout everyone you're interested in, and you'll likely have to scout a few players multiple times before revealing their full ratings. From here on out, you'll also get emails from other teams offering trades for your players. If you do decide to make a trade, you must do it in your own block, similar to signing or scouting. The schedule system in this game is really the biggest frustration, having to do things the way the game wants you to do it and not just freely. Once you're in the trade block, you can then call up the team that's interested in making a deal. You can only trade up to 3 players or draft picks at a time. There is no gauge to tell you how interested the other team is other than how they respond, so you may have to keep offering until they accept something they like. After unrestricted free agency, there's the restricted free agency. This is a little bit more complex. Restricted free agents will still have their rights be under contract with their respected team if they choose to put a tender on them. If another team offers a contract to a restricted free agent who is tendered, the team who owns the player's rights must match the offer to keep them, or can choose not to match the offer and let the player go. but in return get draft compensation from the team that offered. It sounds a bit confusing, but in short, for this game, if you want a player that's a restricted free agent, be prepared to lose a high draft pick. Moving on to my favorite part of the offseason, the NFL Draft. Up to this point, I haven't really talked about the impact of the coaching staff, but like earlier, when they suggest players to resign, they can also suggest players to scout. As you prepare for the draft, I recommend accepting every suggestion they give, as it will help build trust, which will become important later on, and this scouting is different than what we were doing earlier. There are two different versions of scouting coming up. The first one is what we were doing in free agency, where we reveal the ratings of players in the upcoming draft. The other version, we select 25 players to get an in-depth analysis of their strengths and weaknesses. Is this neat? Sure. But I'm not going to sit here and read 25 pages of information of a player that I may not draft. It feels completely useless. In a game that defines ratings through numbers, it's hard to find a full page of information detailing a player engaging. At a certain point, the game will say you've completed all tasks necessary and that you should sim to the draft. I recommend not doing this, as you will skip opportunities to scout more and the computer will not scout for you, which means whatever you have scouted up to this point will be the only player scouted when you get to the draft. Now, what separates this game from other drafts and games is that it uses the actual NFL draft class from that year. So guys like Mario Williams, Reggie Bush, and Vince Young will be available to pick. After this season, there are 40 different draft classes, and the draft in this game is pretty straightforward. You wait till you're next on the clock, look for a player you scouted, then draft them. If you have no idea who to select, you can ask your scouting director to recommend a player. There's really not much more to it. You also have to sign each player individually, as the rookie contracts were not a thing back then. Training camp is up next, and this is where you will practice. Practice, practice, practice. Half of this game is practice alone. These practices comprise of one-on-one, pass skeleton, run skeleton, and full 11-on-11 contact drills. This is where player potential comes into play, as the more you practice, and depending on how well they perform, their ratings will increase to their fullest potential. The best way to increase their potential is the one-on-one drills. The full 11-on-11 and skeleton drills is where you can execute plays in order to create money plays. Money plays are created by having a full 100%. To achieve that, just keep running the same plays in practice. Running them in the skeleton drill increases them by 7, while the full 11-on-11 practices increase them by 20%. A problem I encountered trying to get money plays is that you begin to focus solely on a handful of plays. The reason being, if you use a money play on game day, it resets to 46%, and plays that you don't reach the full 100% that are used on game day drop 20%. So you begin to focus on the same plays over and over again each week. When money plays are used on game day, they're supposed to give your team a ratings boost, but I can't really confirm this. It didn't really feel like my success rate was higher than when it wasn't a money play. Maybe it does do something, but again, it didn't feel like it. After a while, practices do feel tedious and boring. You do get into a groove though, 10 reps each practice, and you get into a flow of deciding how to go about selecting what team, first, second, third on offense, taking on first, second, third team on defense. Same with the one-on-one drills. At a certain point, you begin to rush through them as quickly as possible. You can simulate them, but injuries happen so frequently that it's better to just play them to avoid all season-ending injuries. During my one season playing, the only injuries that happened were through simulation. I'm sure if I tried to overwork the players, injuries could happen, but I never had one happen in practice or in the season. I did really want to talk about these two features though. Motivation and strategy. You can motivate a group of players or an individual player passively or aggressively. Players will respond positively or negatively to these motivations. And as much as I like this feature, I'm not exactly sure what it does. It doesn't increase or decrease their ratings, and there is no morale meter to know how high or low it is for each player. I don't know if there's a hidden morale feature that works similar to Madden, where if players' morale is too low, they are less likely to return to the team after their contract has expired. I really have no clue the impact of what it does. Now, strategy is a feature that I absolutely think is awesome. You can tell each individual player how to play their position for either one play, an entire drive, or for the rest of the game. There's so much depth into it, from the quarterback position to how you want to make your right tackle play. The problem is it doesn't really work. At least it didn't for me, which is a bummer because I really like this concept. There's even a video package in the game showing how it's done, and after I saw that, I tried to replicate it, but it just didn't seem to work how it was advertised. I'm sure there's a way to get this to work properly, but I wasn't able to get it to work. We're now finally to the start of the season. It is broken up into 3 sections: the preseason, regular season, and postseason. This is when you finally get a taste of the schedule that you'll be using for the rest of the game. You'll have owner meetings, which is exactly what it sounds like. You have a meeting with the owner of the team to discuss what you've done right and wrong. Most of the time you won't even have a conversation and skip to the next meeting, the coaches meetings. This is where the coordinator and the positional coaches will give you praise or criticism about the team, depending on how well practice went or the performance of the players after a game that has been played. Earlier I talked about the trust of coaches, and here is where it becomes important. If a coach's trust is too low, they can quit. But if you have a high level of trust, you can take a chance on criticizing them, and their trust will drop, but their coaching ratings for their respective position has a chance to increase. It's not just exclusive to the positional coaches, you can do it with the coordinators as well. After you finish your meetings, you'll have more practice, this time a little bit less than you did during the training camp period, which makes it a little bit more tolerable. Then you get to your first game day. This is the preseason, and unlike the newer Maddens, you don't get a full 70 player roster, which means the players you have on the team will most likely be the players you have on the roster when the regular season begins. Another thing, the computer doesn't sub in second or third team players, which means you'll be starting backups and depth players against their starters for the entire game. That's pretty much it. The schedule remains the same in the regular season and postseason: meetings, practice, then game day. I do want to talk about the gameplay itself. During game day, you select plays to run on offense and defense with the suggestions of your coordinators, and that's it. You can actually connect the mic and verbally call out the plays for extra immersion, but I never did that. The actual performance from the computer running the plays is hit or miss. Seems like there are way too many interceptions from both teams. I had a game where the opponent threw 10 interceptions. I also had a game myself where my quarterback threw 6 interceptions. Pass defense is absolutely overpowered, and if it wasn't for the fact that I forced the running game, I probably would have lost more games. I also wanted to point out that if you keep running the same plays over and over again, the opponent will start to recognize it and call plays against it. When I noticed that, I started spamming plays I never called and ended up putting up 73 points. So the game is not completely cheesable, but it's a little cheesy. I did finish the season with a 15-1 record, which brings me to my next point. There is no difficulty setting. If you do find this game too easy, you'll be out of luck, as there's no way to actually make it harder for yourself. Once you finish the year and get ready for your second off season, other teams will give you contract offers. You can choose to sign with them or continue to play with your original team. Why would you want to play another season? Or even 30? Because you can play 30 seasons. So you can be the greatest NFL head coach ever, which they dedicate an entire hall with detailed information about some of the greatest coaches in NFL history. At least up to this point in time, it was really nice to see this feature in the game. This is also where you can check your own legacy and see if you can match up with some of the greats or even against the coaches in your own division. Well, that's my retrospective of NFL head coach. I do own this game on the original Xbox. The footage used here was from an emulator, but I'm proud to say after 15 years, I finally finished the season of this game. And if you stuck all the way through and enjoyed the video, please consider liking. It does help me out, and it lets me know that you want similar content to this. Also subscribe to never miss an upload. I do plan on uploading an entire season of NFL Head Coach soon, so be sure not to miss that.